And a good day to you. Mark here. Now then, what we've got here, I've got on a bit today, so hopefully we can get this done in the time, this is Merlin. Now, he is the wizard that lives in my attic. Now, he says he is the actual Merlin, and I'm not going to argue with him, because like I said to you before, that way lies madness. You start arguing and disagreeing with people, creatures, things, or whatever you want to call these guys that can do magic, you're going to get yourself into all sorts of trouble. Now, like I said, he turned up, it must be 2 or 3 years ago now. Well, it might be longer, because I tend to lose all track of time now. I've got to that age when it's very hard to tell what's going on, really. I seem to miss out great chunks. One minute somebody's in their 50s, like Harrison Ford, you know, the chap plays Han Solo in Star Wars, and Indiana Jones films fame. And I turn around, and he's 72. Now, what on earth happened there? Where'd all those years go? Because I tend to gauge years by Christmases. And I thought to myself, I can't remember that many Christmases. Now, I know back in the 80s and quite a bit of the 70s, there's a very good reason why I don't remember many Christmases. But latterly, I should remember them, but I don't know. Anyway, that doesn't matter. Basically, like I said, it was a few years ago. I was actually sat in my garden, just watching the world go by. I'd been doing some work in the morning, and this is the afternoon, and I was sat there on my patio, which consists of half a dozen paving slabs stuck on the ground, which is very nice too. We won't complain about that. And I was sort of half dozing in the sun. Nice cold beer. And I suddenly heard this voice say, "Hello." Of course, I looked around, I couldn't see anybody. And I heard the voice say, "Hello." And it wasn't a voice I recognised. Of course, it was quite a bright, sunny day. And I was sat under the big umbrella on the table. Gracie was catching bees, despite the fact I told her it was a really, really bad idea. Gracie being my cat. In those days, I had two. I had a cat called Grace, who lived at my house, and one called Thomas. I can't actually say they were my cats, because they were their cats. If you've ever owned a cat, you'll pretty much know what I mean by that. Cats decide to live with you or not, really. And anyway, that was Grace doing things that she probably shouldn't have done. Now, I'll tell you why she was called Grace. Because she didn't really have any. I can remember, because when I first got Grace, I wasn't living where I live now. I was still living in a flat in the town. There we are. That's a nice wizard's hat for you. And I was actually still in bed. And young Grace, who was probably only a year or so old in those days. Still quite kittenish, if that's a word. If it isn't, I think it should be. Anyway, she came trotting in, like they do, and she jumped onto the dressing table and actually slid right along the dressing table and off the other end, because this was quite a long dressing table, straight onto the floor. Now, she jumped up onto the bed with this expression on her face, which was a combination of embarrassment and actually annoyance, because yours truly couldn't help but laugh. And one thing is for sure, cats do not like to be laughed at. They certainly don't. Well, that's my experience anyway. But there we go. There we got this situation then with this cat that is completely embarrassed, and she's proven, and this is just the latest occasion, that she is not graceful in the slightest. So basically, the only name I could give her really was Grace. So that's basically how that came about. Anyway, going back, this voice said to me, "Hello, I'm Merlin." And I finally saw, out of the corner of my eye, this little chap. And he was stood at the end of my patio, in my back garden, I might add. Now, there is no way round to my back garden from the front of the house or the back of the house. You have to actually come through the house, because there were paths all the way round from the back in the old days when it was safe to have such things. But the world being as it is now, you can't have things like that anymore. You have to have the security, surround your little house with fences or walls. I've surrounded my house with bramble bushes, which may have been one of the reasons that Merlin decided that might be worth a visit. I don't know. Now, I've always had a bit of a thing for the magical world. That goes right back to when I was at college. And we had a history teacher who had a wife. And of course, we used to go to their house, or their flat, I should say. Some of the prefects. Oh yes, indeed, I was a prefect in the old days. I know you might find that hard to believe. In fact, for the last year I was at college, I was actually head boy. So there. Anyway, and I won't give you their real names because they're probably still around. But this chap's wife was definitely a witch. I don't know exactly then what level she was at, but she definitely practiced to the point of becoming quite good, actually. Lovely, lovely, lovely lady. And we used to have, oh, lovely meals around there. She was a wonderful cook. Did wonderful pasta dishes. And they actually had Afghan hounds. I don't know if you've ever come across anybody with an Afghan hound, which is really like a greyhound with lots and lots of fur, really, and they're incredibly highly strung. Incredibly highly strung. And that's what really got the... I mean, like I said, from a child, I was always interested in stories about magic and wizards and witches and such like. I mean, basically, I was under the firm belief in those days that most fairy tales, and I think probably still applies, were really there to, as a guide, a warning to children not to do something. Such as don't go into the woods alone, which is very good advice actually, because some of the nastiest creatures I've ever come across tend to live in woods. And you definitely don't want to go into them on your own. But anyway, this is Merlin. And he turned up, and I didn't know who he was. I mean, he had a strange pointed hat on, it had to be said, with a little black bent feather in the bright red band that was round his hat. The hat was like a greyish purple, almost like a... I don't quite know what you would call it, but it was quite a posh hat. Bit battered, I think it'd been round the mill a few times. Because this chap was no spring chicken, that was for sure. And anyway, he then said, "How are you, Mark?" Now that really got me intrigued, because I thought, how does he know my name? Because I mean, I've actually met a fair few people over the years, but I didn't remember this chap on the bit. He had this kind of shaggy beard, as you can see, and he had a funny coat. It was my granddad years ago had a waistcoat. Not a waistcoat, but I might say a dressing gown. Now, I don't know if you remember the old style dressing gowns, and they used to have the sort of cable string rope effect around, that sort of looped around the cuff and all around the edge of this dressing gown was like a rope effect. Well, this coat that this wizard was wearing reminded me of that quite a bit, really, as you can see. But what I didn't know was, and I didn't quite understand, I mean, I've read various books. I mean, I read Lord of the Rings many years ago, and most of the wizards that I'd come across before in books and always wore hoods and cloaks. Some wore pointed hats, but for some reason they always appeared to be slightly smarter than the chap that was stood in front of me. Now, anyway, he pulled up a chair and sat down, and we had quite a pleasant afternoon talking about this and that. Anyway, top and bottom of it is, it transpired that he didn't have anywhere to live. And he was wondering, because he knew it was empty, I don't know how he knew it was empty, if he could move it to my attic. rent my attic. Now, the funny thing was, that was his actual words, not mine, rent. And as far as I know to this day, I haven't had any rent for him. So I don't quite know who he's paying the rent to, because it's certainly isn't me. And I mean, he's no trouble. He keeps himself up there. And, well, there was the incident when he blew a hole in the roof with the dragon. But these things happen, don't they? But there we are. Anyway, I didn't see any particular reason at the time why you shouldn't. And so I said, well, that'll be fine. And I didn't see him for a few days after that. He did have a small suitcase with him that seemed to be incredibly heavy for its size. But one of the things I've learned over the years is if somebody wants you to know something, they'll tell you. And sometimes it's probably best not to ask. And I don't know why, but I had a kind of feeling this might have been one of those moments. But I don't know. But anyway, there was a lot of bashing and crashing and banging for a few days, and I was a bit worried about that, because I couldn't actually get up into the attic to see what was going on. But anyway, one morning, it must have been about 3 days later, I was in the kitchen, I was having breakfast, and down came Merlin, covered in dust, cobwebs, and I said to him, what on earth have you been doing? And I must admit, he was a bit indignant. He said, did you know? And I had a feeling I wasn't going to be able to say yes to this answer, or this question even. But I'm getting ahead of myself. He said, did you know that that's probably the dustiest attic I've seen in a long time? And I said, well, it's the only one I've ever owned, so I don't know too much about that. But by the way, you're welcome. Anyway, he made himself a cup of tea, and he went to the larder, and he got the cornflakes out, and he put them in a bowl, and I said to him, would you like some milk with those cornflakes? He said, no, Genghis doesn't like milk. Now, I took a step back at this, and I thought, Genghis? Who on earth is Genghis? So I said to him, who is Genghis? And he looked at me over the top of his little spectacles that he had perched on the end of his nose always, and how they stayed there I have no idea, but they seemed to. Even when he was getting most animated. He said, Genghis is a vulture. He's a king vulture, and he helps me with my work. And I thought, well, I don't know about this. I mean, it's one thing having a wizard in your attic, but a vulture. And I said, where is he then? Is he coming down to have breakfast with us? And he said, no, he's in the attic talking to Hector. Hector, I said, who on earth is Hector? I thought, this is getting worse. Hector Snout Dribble. Now, apparently Hector Snout Dribble is a dragon, which I expect you probably worked out, because they tend to have kind of strange names. Hector Snout Dribble. Anyway, I didn't ask any more questions. I should have done, I suppose, but I didn't. And Merlin trotted off upstairs, and I thought to myself, well, I've always sat in the kitchen thinking, well, I don't know if I've done the right thing here. But like I said, you can see the chap here. This is Merlin, and he looks relatively harmless. And he says he's been around, well, he says for a few thousand years, but I mean, I don't know about that. I mean, how would I know about that? I've been here for 62 and a bit, which is a lot shorter span than, I don't know if I could cope with it for 3,000 years. Do you? That would be, eternal life. Oh, I don't know. I suppose if you could stay young and fit and healthy, it'd be fine. But I don't know even then. And of course, if everybody could do that, it would be a pretty damn crowded place, wouldn't it? Let's be honest about it. Anyway, that's roughly the story of how Merlin turned up. And we're getting on a bit now with this, because I noticed, although I said I started a lot of this drawing to save time, as per usual, the time is moving on. And we hadn't even started on poor Genghis yet. So that's pretty much, I think, all we're going to do here for Merlin, I think, for the time being. I don't think he needs any more work or description of the old chap. He doesn't like it when I call him an old chap, but to me, because I mean, by all, well, gets me a bit flustered talking about this chap. He is, as wizards go apparently, quite young, really, on the grand scale of things. Because what you've got to understand is, you see, we live in this particular world, and these fellas, we can move around the house going from room to room. And these fellas do the same sort of thing. But it's not room to room they tend to go to. It's realm to realm. And these places they go to are not on any TripAdvisor. Not what I've ever seen anyway. You see, this is Genghis, and he's relatively harmless. I mean, he's got quite a beak on him, and I should imagine if he ever got roused, he'd be a bit of a force to reckon with. But Merlin assures me that that doesn't happen very often. And when it does, it's usually in the heat of battle. I must admit, when he said to me battle, I did tend to look at him a bit quizzically. I thought, battles? We don't want battles round here. No siree, we don't want any battles round here. Now, this vulture, as you can see, doesn't have a lot of hair on his head, just a few tufts. Certainly no feathers. Now, he's introduced me to a couple of chaps that you might have actually seen, because I do put their picture and their little stories up from time to time. And they're called Spitball and Snib. Now, Don't blame me for the names. I don't make them up. And they do, which I suppose the closest thing you could call it is a blog. Because they just basically sit on a branch commenting on the world as it goes by. So I think that's about it. I don't think we need to do a lot more to this. I will finish the picture off and I will post it on my Facebook page and maybe put it on to a video in the future. I hope you enjoyed the ramblings of an old, slightly worn out chap, and I'll speak to you again soon. You take care now. Bye bye.